So just last night, our beloved CCO Pilestedt announced he was going on a sabbatical. And when he gets back, he'll be working on Arrowhead's next game. Now, I've already covered all the details we have with this news in the last video I just posted, with him responding to some of the fans on how long he will be gone and answering some other questions and giving some other details. So check that video out if you're interested. That'll be in the description down below. However, what I wanted to cover in this video is how this has left the fans of the franchise worried. Players are worried that he may straight up just be abandoning Helldivers 2 in favor of working on the next game. More importantly, people are worried that without his guidance, Helldivers may go back down the path it used to be going in back when the game was called Nerf Divers, pretty much back with the Escalation of Freedom update. And also, I've seen the comment more than once that Pilestedt has literally stepped down as the CEO into this CCO position to literally save the game and fix the game's balancing, which isn't exactly true. Now, before we do this, I just want to say I do think that all of these different concerns are valid. You know, when someone who is known as a great leader takes a step back, is going on vacation for a few months, and also seemingly shifting his focus onto a brand new game, people are just simply worried about where is the leadership going to end up now. But I want to tell you guys why I'm not exactly worried about this, and also just kind of fill you guys in on some information so that you can come to your own conclusion on this topic. So after you're done watching, let's have some conversation in the comment section. Ultimately, we will definitely just have to see what the next few updates bring. I think there's more to Pilestedt's decision here today. He's likely been thinking about this for a while. It's not like it was a spur of the moment decision, and we will show some previous messages from the CCO to support this. So first off, players are worried that Pilestedt is abandoning Helldivers 2 in favor of whatever new game he is going to be making. And luckily, he just flat out responded to this user on Reddit, alleging exactly this, as well as some sort of encroachment from Sony, which I think is a fair point to think about. And Pilestedt responded, "Hey, nothing sinister behind it. The development is led by Mikhail, with Emil, one of the co-founders, taking over a lot of my responsibilities. When I'm back, I will still help the team. I will still offer my feedback on what is being built. Just need some rest to get back up on the horse." Now, remember Mikhail and Emil, because we will get back to them in a bit. But first, I also wanted to bring up this message from Pilestedt back on December 31st, 2024. And he said, "With 10 minutes to 2025, what are your expectations and desires for what the next Arrowhead game will be? I am working on the high concept, but I would love to hear your speculation." And this tweet simply was sent a month ago now, so he has been thinking about this for a while. It wasn't some sort of spur-of-the-moment decision. I don't think anyone really thinks this was a spur-of-the-moment decision, but I just figured I'd point this out. And to put it simply, he's not abandoning Helldivers 2. He will still be there. Obviously, he's going on sabbatical right now, which he will be on call. However, when he gets back, his focus may shift towards making the new game, but he will still be there. He will still be involved in the vision of the game anytime some sort of major company meetings are happening, I'm assuming. And with that being said, players are also concerned that without Pilestedt's guidance, that the development philosophy could revert back to what it was pre-Buff Divers patch. And there's also a narrative that Pilestedt literally stepped down as CEO to save the game. Alright, so let's go back in the timeline. Back in May, when the popular weapon, the Eruptor, was nerfed, the shrapnel ended up getting removed, removing the identity from this weapon. Now this, on top of some previous nerfs, caused a pretty large uproar from the community. I posted a video back on May 8th covering this topic and covering the uproar from the community. And literally that same day, on May 8th, Pilestedt took to Twitter and Discord, responding to many players about their dissatisfaction with the weapon balancing. I then immediately made a YouTube covering those interactions as well on the same night. Because I had posted a negative video about the game, I felt it was only fair to also report the positive news. And then we fast forward to May 22nd, and this was when Pilestedt stepped down as CEO, naming Shams Georgiani as the new CEO. So 2 weeks after players were complaining about the game's balance and Pilestedt was responding to lots of these players' concerns, saying they would fix it, he stepped down as CEO into that CCO position where he could go more hands-on with the creative direction of the game and deliver patches that players love. Then we can fast forward to June. We received a large buff patch that players absolutely adored. One of the stratagems that got buffed in this patch was the Orbital Precision Strike, and the explanation for it was as follows. The Orbital Precision Strike's original intent was to be used against spawners and fixed positions. However, this hasn't stopped the community from using it against pretty much everything. Therefore, we want to make it a little easier to use against moving targets by lowering the call-in time. We also lowered the cooldown to make it more available and make it more competitive in comparison to the Eagle stratagems. Now, the buff to the Precision Strike was great. It felt much better to use, but it wasn't necessarily the buff itself that made everyone happy. It was the explanation. Arrowhead straight up said, "This was our intention, but we found that you guys didn't like that. We found that you guys liked it a different way. Therefore, we're leaning into what the players want rather than what we intended." And this explanation, as well as this patch, restored a lot of trust in the player base. But wait a minute, let's just take one quick step back to May 22nd, when Pilestedt stepped down as CEO. Because there is this narrative, and I've seen many people comment this, that he literally stepped down as CEO to save the game. However, he shared an article with an interview explaining why he made this decision. And in this article, he explains, "Over the last year going to launch Helldivers 2, I've been pulled more towards the business side of things and not able to focus as much on the creative side. That made me realize I needed to make some decisions, both for the success of the business, but also myself. So I reached out to Shams, we had a lunch, and we asked him that if I was to reconsider running Arrowhead for the next decade, and I needed to hire a new CEO, would he be interested?" After some contemplation and deep anxiety on how things are going to pan out, I finally came to the proper conclusion that I will have to follow my heart. It's not only right for me, but also right for the organization. Having a reluctant CEO is not something that will turn out that well, I think. So basically, he had been thinking about stepping down as CEO even before the game launched, not to fix the game's balance, but so he could take a more creative role. With that being said, though, it is still very valid to say, okay, but after he stepped down and was more hands-on, that's when the game started going in a better direction, once that June patch brought tons and tons of buffs. However, after all of this, let's fast forward more in the timeline. On August 6th, 2024, Escalation of Freedom dropped. Helldivers 2's worst patch in its first year of the game, and honestly, I predict that out of all of the game's future history, that will probably still be known as the worst patch ever. Players were extremely dissatisfied, leaving negative Steam reviews, and player counts even hit as low as 5K concurrent on the Steam charts for multiple days in a row at the lowest point. This was basically during the lowest week. Players were extremely frustrated with the state of the game and were begging developers to fix it, and this absolutely crushed the developers' morale internally. Pilestedt even left this message in the Discord saying this. A user, Hammerhead, asked how is staff morale doing, and he responded, "It's hard, it's a tricky situation. The criticism is valid, but it causes low morale, and low morale causes slow development speed. Talk about a negative spiral." And like he said, the criticism was valid, it was just very tough to work through it, and the devs heard us, and they answered. Shortly after this outcry, Arrowhead Game Studio came out with a post titled "A Message to the Community from Our Game Director," where they outlined all of the major pain points that players were complaining about, exactly what they were going to do to fix them, how they were going to work internally to change their game philosophy, and how long this would take. 60 days, and this was known as the 60-day plan. Now, this post was written by the game director, Mikhail, one of the people that Pilestedt mentioned who is in a leadership position and is now taking some of his responsibilities, at least while he's on sabbatical. And this update was a major success, giving a big resurgence to the game. Players were extremely happy, and they were again leaving good reviews on Steam. A user in the Discord asked the new CEO, Shams Georgiani, how is morale in the studio now? And Shams responded saying this: much better. We're super happy that the user score on Steam is so much better and more are playing the game. So it was a success, and Mikhail was one of the leaders working on this. So the reason I bring this up is because people are worried that with Pilestedt gone, that Arrowhead is going to just drop the ban hammer all of a sudden again. And to be honest with you guys, only the next few updates will really tell us if that happens. But in my opinion, instead of just, reverting the nerfs and not really learning a lesson, Arrowhead took 63 days to figure things out internally, change their philosophy, change how they approach the game, and they were completely rewarded by it. They went from a very, very low point in morale to then a high point in morale. And I have played other games where a major nerf happens, players are outright outraged by it, and the devs instantly revert it simply due to the outrage. But it doesn't really seem like they learned a lesson, only to bring some more nerfs or some more changes that players dislike, even in directly the next patch. But Arrowhead didn't do this. They actually sat down, changed internally, and this is the smart thing to do, and it ended up paying off. What this honestly tells me is that a lot went into that 60-day plan, more than what us as players experienced or have seen. They completely changed their philosophy on making a fun game. And now with Pilestedt taking a sabbatical, the ball is back in Arrowhead's court. If they happen to nerf something on the very next update and kind of make me look stupid for making this video, I'll be pretty upset by that. But on a serious note, it is now up to them to continue positive updates for the game that pleases the player base and keep the good momentum going from the release of the Illuminate. So many players returned on the Illuminate patch. We have had 100,000 peak player counts on the Steam charts for almost a week in a row after that patch dropped. And many, many players are waiting for the full faction to release. We are just waiting for that next update. Now, I'd also like to bring some attention to one more developer at Arrowhead Studios, Nicholas Malmberg. He's the guy who was reading the patch notes with Pilestedt for the 63-day plan. Now, this morning, Baskinator was responding to a lot of users in the Discord today with random questions about the situation happening, and she was basically just trying to calm the situation in there because players are worried. So I went in there and asked her this question: how involved was Pilestedt with some of the better patches? Because I think a lot of people are thinking he's the reason for the 60-day plan, etc. I guess, what are some of the roles the CCO position does? Also, what other leaders were involved with making that happen? I'm pretty sure Nicholas Malmberg had to do with it. He was in the trailers. And Baskinator responded to me saying, it's kind of hard to estimate, to be honest. We have multiple leaders on the whole project: directors, producers, C-level people like Pilestedt, senior designers, etc. And most of our team are very collaborative, so they work together to push for changes and build these updates and patches. And yes, Nicholas plays a huge part. He is the buff diver. And I'll be honest, I was hoping for a bit more details. However, we at least got the info that Nicholas is literally the buff diver. And also the fact that Arrowhead is very collaborative. So she is clearly saying here that it is not just because of one person at the studio making these updates happen. It's the whole studio all working together to make this happen. And yes, it's true, you could have a very talented studio, but with the wrong leadership, things can go wrong. However, I do believe that the internal leadership has learned a lot from the different trials and tribulations that Arrowhead has gone through. And all of this combined is honestly why I am not worried about this news from Pilestedt. Number one, he is still at Arrowhead. He still will be weighing on Helldivers. He said that himself. Of course, he's going on sabbatical for a while. He will be on speed dial if they need anything. But even when he gets back, he will probably be there for any sort of large company meetings and stuff like that. And I simply trust many of the other developers at the studio, especially after the 60-day plan. And on top of that, if they do happen to drop a bad patch or if they mess something up, I do have good faith that they will listen to feedback and fix it. They've already done that with the 60-day plan, but since then, they've done that with the DSS. And even so, they mentioned that they will still be updating the DSS. It's still not in a perfect state right now. However, after the launch of it, and it was kind of a catastrophe, they updated it a bit so it could be better. And they've also done this with the Killzone collaboration recently. Many players were upset, feeling like it was overpriced, and they made half of it for free. Anytime they make an action that players are simply unhappy with, they definitely take the feedback and usually change something based on that feedback. And I also just don't think they want to throw away any goodwill, especially after their struggle and hard lessons learned with the 60-day plan. And for what it's worth, if even after watching this video, if you're still worried until the next few patches come up, that's totally valid as well. People being worried with leadership changes is totally understandable. I just wanted to share my thoughts on it with you guys. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below, and let's have a conversation. I'll see you guys next time. I'm out.